can I hold the baby too? Tears streaming down my face, I asked as I looked at the newborn baby. Then, Susan and Mark looked at each other and began to laugh. What are you saying? Something so silly? Susan asked, still laughing. You don't have to ask to hold the baby, just do it. Thinking they would say that, I approached the baby when suddenly Susan stopped me. Hey, don't come any closer, she said, still laughing. I thought I misheard, but I hadn't. Why should I let a stranger like you touch my child? Mark also looked at me and laughed. We have no use for you anymore, he spat the words at me. Unable to say anything, I just stood there frozen as they laughed together. Were all those days a lie? Was I the only one who thought we were happily living together as three? It felt like everything was going dark. No, we had a great time. You earned a lot and supported us, right? Susan said, her tone mocking. Yeah, we lived luxuriously, and you always did what we asked, right? Mark added, his words dripping with sarcasm. There was no love or gratitude for me in their words. I had been deceived for over 20 years. I couldn't help but laugh at my own foolishness. Shaking with laughter, I laughed. Has she finally gone mad? Mark looked at me with a sneering, contemptuous face. Why did I ever love such a man? I thought to myself, that's disgusting. What? Susan and Mark looked dumbfounded. I headed towards the door at the back. As I opened the door, they froze. I'm Elizabeth Johnson, 53 years old, living with my husband and daughter. At first glance, you might think we're just an ordinary family. But our case is a bit different. My daughter is not my biological child. She's my husband's daughter from a previous relationship. Before meeting my husband, I was married to another man but got divorced due to infertility. Of course, it was an amicable divorce after mutual discussion. After realizing I couldn't have children, I threw myself into work. Work was my only sustenance. Before I knew it, I had become the rising star at my company. That's when I met Mark, who would become my husband. He was working for a client company the same age as me, and a kind man. I first met him when I visited his company for a meeting, and my heel broke. He helped me, and that was how we met. After that, we greeted each other whenever we saw one another, gradually started talking more, and I found myself looking forward to meeting Mark. Once when I visited Mark's office, I saw a little girl, about 3 years old, in the office. Curious, I asked the receptionist who was helping me, and she said the girl's name was Susan, Mark's daughter. Susan was born not long before her mother passed away. Since then, Mark had been raising her alone, juggling work and fatherhood. Sometimes when Susan couldn't go to daycare due to a fever or something, she'd wait here in the office. There was a cooling patch on Susan's forehead. Just then, Mark returned to the office. Hey, Elizabeth. Are you here for another meeting? He greeted me warmly. Yes, that's right. I imagined all the unseen struggles Mark must have faced. I heard about your daughter. Mark looked surprised but quickly smiled again. Yes, she sometimes comes here. The daycare won't take her even with a slight fever. I see. Please don't mind me, go home and let her rest. Raising a child must be incredibly hard, something I, childless, couldn't even imagine. Right? See you then. Saying this, Mark picked up Susan and left the office. Even during the meeting, I couldn't stop thinking about Mark and Susan. There are many single parents out there, each with their own struggles. Surely every family has its own set of struggles and challenges. And of course, even in families where both parents are present, it doesn't mean there are no hardships. I, unable to have children, would never know such struggles in my lifetime. Suddenly dedicating my life to work felt lonely. I wondered if there was anything I could do to lessen Mark's burden. Unbeknownst to me, my heart had already been stolen by Mark. Since then, I sought more opportunities to talk to Mark. Exchanging contact information and going out for meals with Susan didn't take long. Susan grew fond of me, and the three of us started spending more time together. When Susan turned 4, she casually said, I want to eat Elizabeth's cooking every day. Her words touched my heart. Mark, a bit embarrassed, scolded her. Now, Susan, Elizabeth is busy, don't make unreasonable requests. But what was he really thinking? A few days later, while at the park with them, I asked Mark. I was really happy about what Susan said the other day. Mark looked puzzled, not sure what I was referring to. If it's okay with you, shall I cook daily? Mark's face lit up. Was that unclear? I mean, I'd like to be with you and... Before I could finish, Mark interrupted me. Wait, please. I felt a sudden jolt of anxiety. Mark gazed at Susan playing on the playground equipment and let out a sigh. Did I overstep my bounds? A wave of uncertainty washed over me. Can't add more to your burden. Mark muttered, was it a no then? How about we share the household chores? I was taken aback. Since you're busy with work too, I should take on some of the chores. Does this mean? Could I be misunderstanding? You want to marry me? Oh right. Sorry, yes. No, not like that. Mark was flustered but then stood up straight, facing me. Sorry for being unclear. Will you marry me despite everything? Yes, I answered with a beaming smile. Susan's voice calling for Mark echoed in the distance. Yet, we stood there, hand in hand, looking into each other's eyes. 20 years have passed since that day. We became a family and have lived together ever since. Susan, who was 4 then, is now 24. And I'm still working, as always. I had an inheritance left by my late parents, but more than anything, I wanted to do something for Susan, who loved me like her real mother. Even when I was busy with work, Mark and Susan never complained and helped around the house. But following Susan's wish, I made sure to prepare at least 1 meal a day, as she had said she wanted to eat my cooking every day. From her daycare graduation to finishing college, I tried to fulfill her wishes as much as possible. School events, extracurricular activities, tutoring, I let her do what she wanted, just like other kids. Susan grew up well-behaved, and 2 years ago, she graduated from college and is now working for a local company. Now, all that's left is for her to find someone good and get married. Lately, I've felt more and more like a full-fledged mother. Contrary to my feelings, Susan's attitude towards me seemed cold since she started working. The first time I felt something was wrong was when she stopped eating the meals I prepared. Once or twice might have been okay, but she started eating out every time I cooked. Confused, I consulted with Mark, but he brushed it off lightly, saying, Susan is working now, a full-fledged adult. It's not something to worry about so much. Indeed, that's true. She's an adult now, and I shouldn't interfere too much. That's what I thought at the time, but then Susan stopped eating my meals entirely. Her coldness wasn't limited to meals. We haven't had a real conversation in a long time. Both of us working with different schedules contributed to that, but even in the brief mornings when we saw each other, she acted as if I wasn't there. She wouldn't respond or react to anything I said. One night, when I was eating a late dinner after returning home, Susan came back. Welcome home, Susan. I was just eating. Shall I make you something light? I tried speaking up, but Susan just sighed heavily and retreated to her room without a word. Did I unknowingly hurt Susan? Feeling anxious, I talked to Mark again, but he dismissed it, saying, maybe Susan's just tired from her new job. Despite Susan's cold behavior, I never changed my attitude. Whatever happened, I believed we would eventually return to how we used to be. Blood-related or not, Susan was my daughter. Though days of being ignored and treated coldly continued, I never gave up on talking to Susan every day. Time passed. How long has it been since Susan and I last spoke? Yet I kept greeting her as usual. Good morning. Have a great day at work. Bye. I watched her leave without touching the breakfast I made. Silent. How long will these days continue? I might be reaching my limit. With these thoughts, I headed to work. Over the years, none of my colleagues could give me a satisfactory answer, dismissing it as a delayed rebellious phase or just a phase people go through. Eventually, I stopped consulting anyone and kept worrying alone. Returning home became a source of dread, especially on days when I could leave work on time. Unable to shake off my heavy mood, I would buy ingredients for dinner. I'm home. Hey, welcome back? Mark was already home, watching the evening news, and had opened a beer. Maybe I'll have a drink too today, I said, opening the fridge to grab a beer. What's up? That's rare for you. Talking to Mark about my feelings would only lead to him evading the topic again. Just once in a while. Days like these happen, right? The conversation ended there. If this continues not only with Susan but also with Mark, our conversations might disappear. I felt overwhelmed by anxiety again. Had I not chosen to become a family with Mark and Susan, Would I have avoided these feelings? I caught myself thinking that, and quickly stopped. No, don't think about it anymore, I told myself, taking a deep breath to dispel the anxiety. I'm home. It sounded like Susan had returned. As she passed through the kitchen and headed to the living room, I called out to her. Welcome back, Susan. You're early today. I'm just about to get dinner ready. Hang on for a bit, okay? I expected to be ignored as usual, but I reminded myself not to give in, not to flinch, to behave as I always do. It was like chanting a spell in my mind. Susan let out a heavy sigh. Yeah. Her voice was small, but she responded, oh, yeah. Just wait a minute. I couldn't hide my surprise. But whether she noticed my reaction or not, Susan just watched TV with Mark. I was so happy I almost burst into song. I regretted not preparing her favorite dishes for dinner, as I continued with the preparations. That night, for the first time in years, Susan ate a meal I cooked. Just that alone lifted my spirits as if all the past troubles were a lie. But the good news wasn't just that. During dinner, Susan opened up about someone she wanted us to meet. It was the best day I've had in a long time. For the first time in a while, I slept soundly through the night. The man Susan introduced was wealthier than Mark and I could have imagined. His name was Stephen Young, years older than Susan, and his parents worked for one of the major corporations. He was supposed to work in the same company as his parents, but not wanting to rely on connections, he sought employment on his own, and ended up working at the same company as Susan. Susan and Stephen were in the same department at work, and it seemed he was drawn to her carefree personality. I just couldn't leave her alone, you know? Raised as an elite from a young age, Stephen probably never met someone like Susan before. It's odd for me to say, but Susan doesn't have a competitive spirit. She's laid back, to say the least. Even through my eyes, she's always been a bit of a dreamer. In a harsh world where everyone is compared and striving to be the best, I understood why Stephen was attracted to her. Having lived in that world myself when work was everything. Seeing him sitting next to Susan blushing slightly, I felt relieved. Even though his parents were wealthy, Stephen himself was just an ordinary young man, straightforward and without any biased thoughts. I was looking forward to meeting his parents. On the day our families met, Stephen's parents came all the way from New York to our town. Stephen had arranged the meeting at the most prestigious hotel restaurant in town. I sometimes used it for business entertainment, but Mark and Susan were clearly nervous. Well, it's a big deal discussing our daughter's marriage. Their tension was more than just being in an unfamiliar place. And there I was, somehow calm. Why, I wondered. I think of Susan as my own daughter. Seeing their nervousness, I unconsciously thought I shouldn't get caught up in it too. As I analyzed this, Stephen and his parents arrived. Thank you for coming on such a fine day, Mark began with a shaky voice. Thank you for coming all this way to our little town. I spoke up as Mark stumbled over his words. Oh, please, no need to be so formal. Today we are just parents enjoying a meal together. Stephen's father had a warm and approachable demeanor, and his mother smiled gently by his side. We were really looking forward to meeting Susan and her parents today. She must be around our age, but still had a youthful grace about her. This must be the demeanor of the upper class. Caught up in the moment, I almost forgot I was a parent and responded after snapping back to reality. Our daughter isn't anything special, but Stephen seems to like her easygoing nature. As for Stephen, he's always been rebellious with me. Bringing home such a gentle woman, I had to reassess my view of him. After some initial greetings, we all sat down and a lavish meal was served. Susan and Mark seemed to relax a bit as they saw the fancy dishes. By the time the champagne for the toast was empty, we were all engaged in pleasant conversation. I was initially on guard, thinking they were from the upper class, but the more we talked, the more we got along. It turns out Stephen's father wasn't born wealthy. We talked about our younger days, hobbies, and recent interests, with our generation's topics dominating the conversation, leaving the young couple blinking in surprise. Before we knew it, the main course was over, and dessert and coffee were served. The meeting ended on a cheerful note. I exchanged contact details with Stephen's mother, and we even became close enough to go out for lunch together sometimes. A few months later, Stephen and Susan had a grand wedding and started living in a condo near our house. A year later, we were overjoyed to learn that Susan was pregnant. She quit her job without hesitation and started visiting our house frequently. She spent more time at our place than in her new home with Stephen. Sometimes I suggested she spend more time at home with Stephen, but she would cling to me saying, "Stephen's always at work, and I'm not feeling very well. Plus, I love your cooking," making it impossible for me to send her away. Before I knew it, I was not only cooking for her, but also cleaning their new home and driving her around for errands. As a mother, I thought I should be there for my daughter during tough times. However, I was a bit concerned about her always being on her phone and occasionally going out abruptly. One day Stephen came to our house with Susan. Seeing her lying on the sofa, constantly on her smartphone as usual, he said, "Susan, how about you do something for yourself once in a while? Your mother must be tired from work too." But Susan dismissed him, saying, "It's okay. Elizabeth loves doing this for me. She does it for me." Stephen apologized to me when he saw that Susan's behavior wasn't changing, saying, "Elizabeth, I'm really sorry for all the meals you prepare in advance. Stephen really is a good young man." Well, it can't be helped. I helped raise Susan after all. You don't need to apologize, Stephen. Besides, things will surely change once the baby is born, I said, though I wasn't sure if I was reassuring Stephen or myself. Months later, Susan finally gave birth. I was with her from the moment her labor began, contacting Stephen, his parents, and Mark. Stephen was with her in the delivery room for the birth. I was on edge the entire time, having never experienced childbirth myself. I couldn't even imagine what kind of pain she was going through. Stephen's mother joined me in prayer. The birth went smoothly, and soon Susan and the baby were both looking healthy. I was so moved tears flowed freely. I couldn't wait to hold the baby. But I learned that I wouldn't be able to hold the baby until the next day, so we left Stephen at the hospital and planned to return the next day. The following day, when we visited Susan's room, there was the newborn baby sleeping in the crib. Seeing a newborn up close for the first time, I was moved to tears again. "I can't wait to hold you in my arms," I said, expressing my true feelings. But then the baby started crying with a faint voice, and we were asked to leave the room for breastfeeding. "Stephen will be finishing up work and coming here soon. I'll go pick him up and buy some cake on the way," said Stephen's mother as she left the hospital. Hearing Susan's voice calling from the room, Mark and I re-entered. This time, I was sure I could hold the baby. Thinking that, I decided to check with Susan. "Can I hold the baby too?" I asked. Then Susan and Mark looked at each other, burst into laughter, and started laughing. "What are you saying? Something so silly?" Susan said, still laughing. "You don't have to ask to hold the baby, just do it." Thinking they would say that, I approached Susan and the baby. But then Susan said, "Hey, don't come any closer," still laughing. "What?" I thought I misheard, but I hadn't. "Why should I let a stranger like you touch my child and Stephen's child?" she continued. "A stranger?" I looked at Mark, searching for support. "Has the time finally come?" Mark also looked at me and laughed. "Susan found herself a better cash cow than you. And she's given birth to his child." Was this really the same man I had spent all these years with? His face seemed so distorted. "We have no use for you anymore." He threw the words at me like venom. I stood frozen, unable to respond, as Susan added insult to injury. "Really, I've always hated pandering to you since I was little." "And you, always happy because you got everything you wanted." Mark joined in their laughter. My voice trembled. Everything seemed to turn dark before my eyes. "No, I had fun. You made a lot of money and supported us, right?" "Yeah. We lived luxuriously and you always did what we wanted, right?" There was no love or gratitude for me in their words. Just a sense of treating me like a convenient tool, devoid of any compassion. "Well, you did keep nagging like a mother. Really, what were you thinking? We're the ones who let you keep believing that illusion. We've been pretending to be a family for years. Maybe we have a talent for acting." Again, they both burst into laughter. I could feel my emotions draining away. I had been deceived for over 20 years. I couldn't help but laugh at my own foolishness. Shaking with laughter, I laughed. Mark and Susan looked at me as if I were something strange. Has she finally gone mad? Mark watched me with a sneering, contemptuous face. For the first time, Mark was taken aback by words of scorn directed at him. Mark and Susan looked dumbfounded. Did you know there were others listening to this conversation? I headed towards the back door. Mark and Susan still didn't seem to grasp the situation. As I opened the door, they froze. There stood Stephen and his mother by. Mark and Susan's faces turned pale. In contrast, Stephen and his mother's faces were red with anger. Their expressions were harsh. Then Stephen slowly approached Susan, holding a large envelope in his hand. What's this about? Pressured by Stephen's intensity, Susan tried to stand her ground. I'll ask you straight. Susan, is that child really mine? Stephen looked at the baby sleeping in the crib. Susan's expression flickered for a moment. What are you talking about? Of course it is. Her blinking increased. Stephen silently handed her the envelope. What's this? Susan hesitantly checked the contents of the envelope and was speechless. What's wrong? Mark went next to Susan, took the papers from her hand, and he too was lost for words. I'll get a DNA test done for this child, said Stephen, picking up the papers that Mark had dropped. It's a mistake. Susan desperately appealed to Stephen, but he seemed unmoved. There's a very capable lawyer friend of my husband. This evidence is irrefutable, said Stephen's mother, her voice chillingly cold despite her delicate appearance. Her delicate appearance. Why has it come to this? Susan. Mark seemed unaware of Susan's infidelity. The documents Stephen brought were evidence of Susan's affair and papers related to divorce discussions. It's a mistake. Susan's voice was now a weak murmur, repeating the same words. If it is a mistake, let's clarify it with the test. There was a hint of warmth in Stephen's eyes, perhaps still wanting to believe in Susan. Elizabeth, thank you for everything. Leaving Mark behind, we left the hospital room. It's all right. Whenever Susan was acting strange, I knew something was up. I was the first to suspect Susan's infidelity. During her pregnancy, she often came to our house, constantly on her smartphone. Once I accidentally saw the screen. It looked like a messaging app with texts about meeting up. And then Susan would leave suddenly. Stephen was supposed to be at work, and something about it didn't sit right with me. Around that time, Stephen had casually mentioned to me that Susan was acting distant. I had reassured him it might just be emotional instability common during pregnancy. My suspicions were just that, suspicions, not solid proof. They were only dots that couldn't be connected yet. They were not enough to confront Susan. Stephen had started his own investigation. The results indicated the possibility of Susan's affair and that the child might not be his. By then, Susan was already in her final month of pregnancy. When Stephen told me, I shared my suspicions and suggested a DNA test after the birth to confirm the truth. I really did something unforgivable, despite being deceived. The fact that I raised that child as my own hasn't changed. There's no way I can apologize enough. I said, apologizing to Stephen and his mother. Even though I had been deceived, it was a family issue after living together for over 20 years. It wasn't something only I could be forgiven for. Yet, Stephen's mother casually said, What are you talking about, Elizabeth? Those two are the real culprits, aren't they? You're a victim too. Maybe we should consult the lawyer we used this time. She said it with a childlike laugh. I realized this was one person I should never make an enemy of. I was grateful to have found such a strong ally. A few days later, the DNA test results came back. The child was not Stephen's. Stephen filed for divorce, but Susan refused to accept it, leading to mediation. Susan started to try to charm me again, but I no longer entertained her. In fact, I was so fed up with living in the same house that I quickly made arrangements to move out. Both Stephen and I were astounded by Susan's audacity to refuse the divorce during mediation, but it was clear she would lose the lawsuit. Adultery, physical relationships, and cuckolding during marriage are not condoned, and we even had the DNA test results. Susan was demanded to pay alimony, not only for herself but also for her college student lover who had fled and refused to take responsibility for the child. As a result, Susan had to pay the alimony for both herself and her lover. Moreover, Susan couldn't rely on Mark either. Unknown to me, Mark had quit his job while living off my earnings and had even accumulated gambling debts. I learned about this mess from Mark's mother after I had moved during Susan's ongoing divorce proceedings. Of course, I had already filed for divorce from Mark, with the process facilitated by the lawyer introduced by Stephen's father. Still, both Susan and Mark seemed to be trying to cling to me, but everyone around me knew what they had done and was supportive of me. So far, there have been no assaults from them. As for the baby, Mark's parents decided to take custody. Living in the countryside, they declared their intention to sever ties with both Mark and Susan upon learning of the scandal. If Mark and Susan tried to rely on them, the close-knit community wouldn't allow it. The connections in the countryside are often stronger than even those among relatives. Mark's parents felt that the baby itself wasn't to blame and decided to take care of it, although I was hesitant to leave the baby with them, considering their age. I also felt responsible, having raised Susan until she was an adult, and receiving much help during my marriage to Mark. I decided to assist with the child's education expenses. When I mentioned this to Stephen's mother, she said, "Well, if that's what you think, Elizabeth," and prepared a substantial sum. "No, I can't accept this," I protested, but she insisted, "It's all right. Think of it as severance money from Stephen and that girl," and smiled innocently. It turns out her family was wealthy, something I hadn't known at the time of our first meeting. She was the daughter of the president of the company where Stephen's father worked. "Oh, didn't I mention it?" she asked. "Besides, this is one of the few joys I have." Her gaze sent a chill down my spine. She's truly a frightening person. I was grateful for being in her good graces and becoming friends. Several years later, Mark and Susan were still plagued by debt. As for me, I was off to lunch with Stephen's mother, Elizabeth. Her voice, always like a young girl's, called out to me. Beside her stood Stephen and a younger woman, seemingly finding his new happiness. I waved and hurried over to join them. "My name is Emily. I'm a 30-year-old who married my same-age colleague, Ethan. I work for a multinational company, but currently I'm on maternity leave. We were thrilled to find out I was pregnant shortly after our marriage. Ethan was longing for a child, so he was overjoyed when I broke the news. Both our families celebrated the new life growing inside me. It was unbelievable. Cracks began to appear in our marriage with Ethan after I got pregnant. I never imagined that minor issues would gradually widen into irreparable rifts. "Emily, stop lazing around and do some housework. Useless. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can slack off. Brainless. Don't say that. I'm feeling a bit sick. I made dinner, right? You just threw together some veggies and meat, right?" "That's lazy cooking. I wanted hamburgers today, didn't I?" Feeding me this trash. Ethan threw away the pot of tofu I made without even tasting it. He never asked for hamburgers. It was a totally unjust accusation. "I'm going to the diner. You can eat the trash in the sink." Wait, don't you feel anything throwing away food someone made with love? Aren't you an adult? When I snapped back, Ethan clicked his tongue while looking at my swollen belly. "Shut up. Keep nagging and I'll silence you with my fist." "How can you say that? There's a baby in here. Don't even joke about that." Yelling in frustration and sadness, Ethan left the kitchen without a glance back, leaving a hurtful remark. "It's not like I wanted this kid anyway. Whatever happens to it, I don't care. Your fetus is trash, just like that garbage pot of food." "That's awful. The baby did nothing wrong." Tears welled up as I looked down, but Ethan left through the front door without a care. Why did it turn out like this? Rather than being a blessing, the child became a nuisance to Ethan. Of course, the baby is not at fault. It's all Ethan's selfish whims. Child isn't a toy. You can't always get what you wish for. As I stroked my growing belly, I remembered the day I found out about this 3-month pregnancy. "Ethan, I went to the OBGYN today. It's been 3 months. "Really? Good job, Emily. We've been waiting for this child." "It's a boy, right? We decided to have only one child since we both work." Ethan was strangely insistent on having a son even before I got pregnant. "I want to play outside and play games with my son. So it has to be a boy." It felt like Ethan was mistaking a child for his personal toy. Pregnancy isn't certain, Whether it's a boy or a girl, I'll be happy as long as they're healthy. Hey, tell me the gender of the kid. I only want a boy. It'll be a while before we know if it's a boy or a girl. But don't say you only want a boy. If it's a girl, I don't want it. I hate sassy, cunning little girls. Just you and my sister are enough. Boys are the way to go. Ethan has an older sister, Susan. She's a wise and kind ideal sister-in-law. Ethan feels inferior to the successful Susan. Everyone praises her. A 35-year-old spinster. You're being awful, and you don't have kids just to brag, right? Stop nagging. Emily, make sure it's a boy. If it's a girl, I won't bother with it. How can you say that? It's our child either way. It's our duty to cherish them. Kids can't choose their parents, but parents can choose their kids. Unwanted children are just trash. I always thought Ethan was a strong-willed man, but his true nature showed after we got married and I became pregnant. Thinking about the future of my unborn child makes me feel gloomy. Then a little while later we found out it was a girl. Ethan began to despise me and our unborn daughter as if he had drawn a bad lottery ticket. Carrying trash in your womb. Don't come into my sight. An eyesore of a trash woman. Stop it, Ethan. This child isn't trash. No parent should speak like that. Parent? Who's that? I don't need the trash in your womb. I'd like to sell it on a flea market app. That's awful. You'd only selfishly love even if the child were a boy. Our daughter was growing well in my womb. As I entered the stable period of pregnancy, Ethan never longed for our daughter. It's heartbreaking that our daughter is already disliked by her father before she's even born. What should I do now? I couldn't talk to anyone, but finally confided in Ethan's sister Susan. Susan sighed knowing Ethan's behavior. Ethan has been like this since he was a kid. He turns worst when he doesn't get what he wants. I can't believe he's treating you and the baby like this, Emily. Susan, I can bear it, but it's too sad for my unborn child. Just thinking about what's gonna happen makes me anxious. I'm sorry for the pain. I'm happy to have a niece. My parents feel the same. By the way, have you decided on a name? Yes, her name will be Lily. I chose it by looking at a baby name book, because it sounded cute. Lily, what a nice name. If she is Emily's daughter, she is bound to be adorable. I cannot wait to meet my niece. Thank you, Susan. It makes me happy to hear you say that. I hope Lily grows up to be smart and kind just like you. You are too kind. And do not worry, Ethan will be overjoyed once Lily is born. He cannot resist a cute daughter. I hope so. Ethan will change once he actually sees the baby, right? Susan's encouragement gave me a glimmer of hope. Perhaps Ethan's heart will change once Lily is born. But my hope crumbled when Ethan dropped a bombshell. Emily, get back to work soon after the child is born. I quit my job. You are quitting your job right before our child is born. Why did not you discuss this with me? I do not need to consult you. We will live off your savings from now on. Do not joke. That money is for Lily's education. How can you quit your job with a wife in her final month of pregnancy? Shut up. It is my life. I can do what I want. Do not walk around with that big belly. It is annoying. As Lily's birth approached, Ethan and I only fought. He would not tell me, Susan, or even his parents, why he quit his job. Where does Ethan go every day? He says he is looking for a job, but he is not wearing a suit. Ethan started spending less time at home. Being far from my parents, I was looked after by Susan and my in-laws until Lily was born. Lily was a healthy baby girl. My in-laws were thrilled with their first grandchild. Susan also cared for me after giving birth. I am glad both mother and child are healthy. You did great, Emily. Lily is really cute. Thank you, Susan. I am so grateful to your parents. My parents are over the moon with Lily. But I am so sorry about Ethan. I feel ashamed as a sister for him abandoning you during your first birth. Ultimately, Ethan never visited his daughter at the maternity clinic. So when I returned home with Lily, we were just in his way. Hey, shut that brat up. Her crying is annoying. It is normal for them to cry at night. There, Lily, take her outside if she is disturbing. I am going to sleep. If she cries again, you will regret it. Ethan became furious whenever he heard Lily crying. He did not help with childcare, work, or housework, leaving everything to me. I was exhausted. Lily's 1-month checkup is coming up. I will do my best for you, Lily. Life was tough, but at the 1-month checkup, Lily was declared healthy. Relieved, I returned home. Home. But the front door wouldn't open, no matter how much I tried the key. What's this? Is the key different? As I puzzled, Ethan's mocking laughter came from inside the house. I changed the locks because of the baby's night cries. Sleep outside with the kid? You're kidding, right? You'd go this far? You and the brat are just like trash. Become homeless for all I care. After enduring so much from pregnancy to now, my anger finally exploded. All right, don't complain wherever we sleep. Holding back my urge to yell, I replied in a deliberately calm and bright tone, as if speaking to someone behind me. Susan, did you hear? Ethan told me and Lily to go be homeless and sleep outside. When I mentioned his sister's name, Ethan's voice from behind the door sounded clearly panicked. What? Susan's there with you? Yeah, Ethan hasn't helped at all with the baby. So I was exhausted. Susan kindly stayed with me. Susan, who had been quietly observing, stepped back and furiously pounded on the door. Susan was usually gentle, but now she seemed even angrier than me. Get out, Ethan. You're the one who needs to leave, you jerk. Open the door right now and apologize to Emily and Lily. Ethan seemed cowed by her fury, but stubbornly refused to open the door. Soon, a young woman's sweet voice could be heard from inside. What's up, Ethan? It's noisy outside. I woke up because of the noise. I recognized the woman's voice. Katie, she was the new girl who joined the company right before I went on maternity leave. It's clear now. You were cheating on me while I was pregnant. Ethan, how low can you go? Bringing another woman home while Emily is out for Lily's checkup. As Susan and I confronted him at the door, Ethan, perhaps defiant, laughed triumphantly. Shut up with your yapping. Katie is cute and comes from a wealthy family. I'm divorcing Emily and marrying Katie, right, Katie? Yes. Ethan said he loves Katie the most, and that we'll have a boy. Did you hear that? I'm gonna remarry Katie and build a happy family. Her family is rich. Emily, I'll graciously give you alimony and child support. Ethan, my dad thinks you're a bachelor, so I want to wear a wedding dress soon. Susan and I fell silent in the face of Ethan and Katie's delusional future. Our accumulated anger turned to disbelief, and even yelling seemed pointless. If you've thought this far, so be it. I'll agree to the divorce. Of course, I'll demand alimony from Ethan and Katie. Ethan, just so you know, Mom and Dad are furious with your behavior. They'll disown you when they find out about this. Susan, I don't care if Dad and Mom disown me. Just get lost with Emily and her brat. Don't regret it, Ethan. Let's go, Emily. Stay at my place. Lily, let's go to your aunt's house. Thank you, Susan. Ethan, don't complain about the consequences. After warning Ethan, I took Lily and went to stay at Susan's place. Susan apologized as she watched Lily sleeping. I'm so sorry, Emily. This is not what I wanted. Our parents are so ashamed. I'm sorry, Susan. Please don't apologize. I actually feel relieved. It's not your fault, or your parents'. It wasn't Susan's or her parents' fault. Ethan was to blame. I'll contact my family too. Sorry for the trouble, Susan. Nonsense. It's gonna be tough, so stay with us. I'd be happy to have you and Lily. Rest easy today. Thank you so much, Susan. I'll probably be busy tomorrow. The next day, while putting Lily to sleep at Susan's, Ethan called. Just as expected, he's panicking. I let the phone ring without answering, and it kept ringing incessantly. He seemed really panicked. After ignoring him for a while, I decided to take the call. What do you want? Don't call, Lily might wake up. Emily, you set me and Katie up? You secretly did an affair investigation and snitched to Katie's parents. What? Normally, you keep affair investigations secret. But I bet Katie's parents were shocked to discover their daughter was involved with a married man. You shouldn't have interfered. Because of you, Katie's parents disowned her. Her dad came yelling at me yesterday. Oh dear, that's tough. You are planning to ingratiate yourself with Katie's wealthy family for an easy life. Must be tough to be disliked by her father. So it's all your fault for telling Katie's parents. Now she's penniless and disowned. I can't use her family's money. Well, if you're dating a man with a pregnant wife, any parent would be angry. If you love Katie the most, why don't you remarry her, even if you're both penniless? Don't joke. I was supposed to live luxuriously with Katie's family wealth. You ruined my happiness. I don't care about that. As for the divorce, I'll communicate through a lawyer. I'll demand alimony for your affair and abandoning the family. When I mentioned the estimated total of alimony and child support, Ethan begged me desperately. Emily, I'll break up with Katie. Let's start over as a couple, live happily together. Live happily together? Which face of yours is saying that? There's no way I'm getting back with you. Lily and I will live our lives. You will be happy with your beloved Katie. Please forgive me. Katie is so dumb she even got fired. I can't be with her. Help me. Then, you're a perfect match. A foolish man and woman. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Goodbye. Ignoring Ethan's excuses, I hung up. Susan, who had been watching, sighed deeply. Emily, stay here until the divorce is finalized and things settle down. Dad and Mom are disowning Ethan. I'm considering cutting ties as well. Susan, thank you for introducing me to the investigation agency and letting us stay at your place. My parents are also relieved. I'm grateful to have a friend at the investigation agency. Emily, if Ethan comes back begging for reconciliation, I'll send him away. Thank you for everything. Truly owe you. Susan, I continued preparing for the divorce with my lawyer. Susan and my in-laws helped with taking care of Lily. Ethan came around a few times, but Susan turned him away. We have evidence of Ethan's affair with Katie, his malicious abandonment, and unilateral neglect of family life. The investigation agency friend was appalled. This means a significant amount of alimony for the wife. It was a wise decision to divorce Ethan for Lily's sake. Katie's parents promised to make their daughter pay for her sins. She'll have to pay the alimony herself. Ethan sought help from our parents, but they refused. Dad and Mom can't forgive him this time. I'll demand child support from Ethan, and he'll have to pay it himself. After the lawyer intervened, the divorce went through without a hitch. There was a lot of fuss over property division, but Ethan ended up paying a large amount in alimony due to his past actions. Katie was disowned and kicked out by her parents, so we demanded appropriate alimony from her too. She left Ethan for another man, it seems. I wonder how she'll pay. Leaving Ethan was the right choice, though. Katie was actually two-timing Ethan. It was just a fling for her, and she never intended to marry him. I hate to say it, but she seems quite cunning. At least smarter than Ethan, played by a 23-year-old girl and then dumped. Ethan really is beyond help. But be careful, Emily. Ethan can be surprisingly vindictive. He might do something to you and Lily out of spite. He keeps contacting me for reconciliation even after the divorce. It seems like he's really struggling financially. He's been asking me for money too. I blocked his calls and messages. Such a hassle. As Susan said, Ethan was a foolish yet vengeful man. Despite ignoring the demands for alimony and child support, he kept begging for reconciliation. Even Katie took out loans to pay her alimony, but Ethan wants to reconcile because he can't pay. He's a useless man without any pride. As much as I hate to speak ill of him since he's Lily's biological father, Ethan's pathetic behavior was persistent and increasingly aggressive. I'm the victim here, Emily. You ruined my life. You should be paying me alimony. Be prepared for my revenge. Ethan was screaming resentfully in front of Susan's house. It was a nuisance to the neighbors, so Susan, her parents, and I discussed how to handle it. I'm worried about Lily. He seems capable of putting her in danger. We should be cautious when going out. It's unbelievable he's getting upset without paying alimony. The thought of being subjected to Ethan's irrational resentment was frightening. Susan's parents came up with safety measures for Lily and me. After making these plans, I went shopping nearby with Lily, covering for Susan, who was working from home. Lily, let's head back quickly after shopping. There might be scary people. After a quick shopping trip, as I was pushing Lily's stroller back home, a disheveled man suddenly appeared. If you care about this brat's life, forget all the money you owe me. Ethan, give Lily back. Someone help. My daughter is being kidnapped by a suspicious person. If you reconcile and work for me, I'll return the kid. Hurry up and obey. Lily, frightened by Ethan's loud screaming, started to cry. See, such a brat can be easily dealt with. Obey my orders. Withdraw the divorce. No way. You're not a husband or a father, just trash. Ethan seemed desperate as I refused to comply. Passers-by, sensing something was wrong, discussed whether to call the police. The police will see I'm not at fault. I'll tell them how my wife ruined my life for no reason. You're so delusional. Do you really think that excuse will work? This is your last chance. Give Lily back. Shut up. I'll take this brat and use her as a hostage. Ethan tried to flee, holding Lily roughly, but his efforts were futile. Officer, over here. My ex-husband is trying to forcibly take my daughter. Several police officers intervened, and Ethan was arrested for attempted kidnapping. Lily wasn't hurt, and she stopped crying when I held her. Thank you. My ex-husband has been vengefully harassing us. No, we're still husband and wife. That was just a marital spat. This is overblown. When will you stop calling us husband and wife? It's over. The police are aware of that. Did you set me up with the police? Don't say such horrible things. Your parents advised talking to the police because of the danger. They were concerned for me and Lily. How low can you be? I'm not at fault. I just came to see my daughter. Witnesses to Ethan's excuses shook their heads in denial. The police grimaced at his transparent lies. Great father using his daughter as a shield. And even his excuses are pathetic. Shut up. Being disowned and dumped by Katie, it's all your fault. Even involving the police. Ethan, displaying an incredibly disgraceful behavior, was unflinchingly detained and taken away by the police. Even in the patrol car, Ethan continued to shout, causing the police a great deal of trouble. I'm relieved Lily doesn't understand yet. With his attitude, he's causing trouble for the police too. It was good we consulted them. Susan rushed over and we were briefly interviewed by the police, but it ended quickly. Susan was relieved Lily was safe. Lily, I'm so glad you're okay. Ethan, I won't forgive him this time. I'm cutting all ties, he's no longer my brother. I hope the police give him a hard time. I also let my guard down thinking we'd be safe because it's our neighborhood. Thankfully, the police were keeping watch, so everything turned out okay. Ethan's parents must be shocked their disowned son was now in police custody. In the police station, Ethan keeps insisting he's not at fault, despite the evidence. Everything Ethan has done is recorded. It's clear he's at fault for the divorce. He always had a strong sense of victimhood. I remember Ethan complaining before that his parents favored Susan. Is that true? Our parents never played favorites. Ethan just always wanted to be special, and hated losing, but never put in the effort. I see, he was a bit childish at work too. I thought it was charming at first, but he started to pretend to be more mature, hoping a gentle person like Susan would change him, but his nature didn't change. He was oddly fixated on having a son to brag about and play with. Now I realize he had no friends. With his personality, he wasn't the type to play well with others. While chatting and comforting Lily, we got a call from the police. They issued a restraining order against Ethan for Lily and me. Violating a restraining order is a clear crime. Ethan seems to have learned his lesson. He still won't pay alimony or child support, though. He should take responsibility for what he's sown. If he doesn't pay, it'll be subject to enforcement, right? Yes, he'll likely be targeted for enforcement soon. After my maternity leave, I returned to my job at the multinational company. I'm happy I can still be close with Susan after the divorce. Me too. I'm relieved we can talk like before. My parents are grateful too. Having you look after Lily is a big help. It lets me work with peace of mind. To give me a break, our parents suggested Susan and I grab coffee together. Lily is adored by my in-laws. As we were chatting about work and other updates, a familiar female voice approached us. It's Emily, right? Long time no see. How have you been? To my surprise, there was Katie, Ethan's former affair partner, holding hands with another man. The nerve of her to casually greet me. Hello? Thanks for everything back then? After that, I did some reflecting. I've been working and paying back the money. I'm dating this guy I met at work now. Really? Hard to keep track of how many boyfriends you've had. As Katie and her current boyfriend were leaving, she suddenly added, "Oh yeah, about Ethan. I was walking in the night streets for work, and he started following me around. Super clingy and creepy, so I called the cops. Then Katie and her flashy boyfriend happily left." Susan and I exchanged a look and chuckled wryly. A 23-year-old former mistress creeped out and calling the cops on him. I can't forgive him, but Katie kind of delivered the final blow to Ethan, getting the police involved again. Ethan, who hasn't paid alimony or child support, became a target for enforcement. He's struggling while juggling multiple part-time jobs to make the payments. Rumor has it that Ethan caused a scene at the place where Katie works. Katie ended up breaking up with her boyfriend after he found out about her involvement with Ethan. Ethan's causing police trouble for the third time, and Katie's broken up but pregnant. Ethan might be hopeless, but Katie will probably survive cunningly. Ethan lost his part-time jobs and became even more destitute. I plan to relentlessly pressure him to pay the alimony he owes, as it's entirely his own doing. I think it'll be done soon. Take care of the rest. I stared in disbelief at the man in front of me. It had been several months since my father-in-law, Sam, started showing symptoms of dementia. His son Luke and Luke's wife Rachel were planning to abandon Sam and escape from this situation. Sam is a person who could be kind to anyone without discrimination. I, and certainly Luke and Rachel too, had been supported and helped by Sam numerous times. And yet, are they trying to repay kindness with ingratitude? Or are these two so heartless that they don't even feel indebted? The rising frustration and anger inside me left me speechless. I glared at Luke and Rachel, who were selfishly acting during this difficult time, instead of showing compassion for Sam. Instead of speaking, unaware or unconcerned about my anger, they continued preparing to move out. I wanted to scold them for their lack of compassion, but before I could approach, they hurriedly left for their new home. Reluctantly, I returned to the room where my father-in-law waited. Despite being betrayed by his son, Sam had a smug look and said with a grin, "I've been waiting for this moment." My name is Catherine. I met my husband Tim through a mutual acquaintance when I was 40. I wasn't planning on marrying again, intending to live freely with hobbies and travel, but Tim and I got along very well. I was open to a common-law marriage, but Tim was adamant about a formal one, so we went through the official process. Upon our marriage, I moved out of my apartment to live with Tim and Sam in their family home. Tim's mother had passed away 5 years earlier, leaving Sam living alone. The suggestion to live together came just before our marriage. Initially wary of it being for caregiving, I found Sam to be healthy despite his age. Tim and I felt capable of caregiving if needed in the future. Sam, knowing I might feel burdened, proposed separating our living spaces. He lived on the first floor, and we lived on the second, which had its own kitchen and bathroom thanks to minor renovations. This setup allowed for some privacy and was never stressful. Sam's considerate nature was a major reason for deciding to live together. Our life was not glamorous, but it was peaceful. Then tragedy struck. Tim suddenly passed away. I received the news while preparing dinner. It was a call from Tim's phone, which was unusual during work hours. There was an emergency responder on the line, informing me that Tim had collapsed at work and was being transported to the hospital. I rushed to inform Sam, who was usually watching TV at this time, but he wasn't there. I found him asleep in his bedroom. Hesitating to wake him, I left a note. "Tim has been taken to the hospital." I'm going there and rushed to the hospital. It was only a 15-minute drive, but by the time I arrived, Tim had already passed away. The cause was a sudden cardiac event attributed to heart disease, and it seemed to be classified as a sudden death. I was in shock, barely registering the doctor's words, and sat down heavily. How long had I been sitting there? I noticed a missed call on my phone. The call was from my father-in-law, Sam. Just as I was about to answer it, the call ended. I managed to regain a bit of composure and decided to head home for the time being. Returning home, Sam was waiting at the entrance. I hurriedly parked the car and ran towards him. "What about Tim?" He looked at me with concern. He looked pale. He was clutching his phone, worried about his son. I hesitated to tell him the truth. Inside, we sat down and I managed to say, "Tim, he's passed away." It was sudden. I thought I should relay what the doctor had said, but I was so choked up that I couldn't find my voice. I was still struggling to accept the reality. Sam was shocked but didn't press me for more words, sensing my state. We parted for the night to gather our thoughts and planned to talk more the next day. Alone in my room, I couldn't sleep, grappling with the fact that I'd never see my beloved husband again. Sitting up in bed for a while, I realized it was already bright outside. It was 9 a.m. when I checked the clock. Thinking he'd be awake by this time, I headed to my father-in-law's room. As I entered the living room, I found him already sitting in a chair, drinking coffee. It seemed he hadn't slept either, his eyes red and swollen. I explained to him about Tim's passing and what the doctor had told me as best as I could remember. Sam listened with a troubled expression and finally let out a tear, saying, "A parent should never have to bury their child." Tim and Sam weren't particularly close, but they cared for and respected each other deeply. Tim's proposal to live together was likely to prevent his elderly father from feeling lonely. And Sam, not wanting to burden me, had hesitated to live with us, as I'd learned from Tim earlier. Prioritizing my feelings as his son's wife, Sam had always been a warm-hearted person after we started living together. Seeing such a father-son relationship up close, I felt a sharp pain in my heart for Sam, a grieving father. Although overwhelmed with grief, we had to proceed with the necessary arrangements as the bereaved family. We divided tasks like contacting relatives, arranging the funeral, and handling paperwork. After the funeral, Sam and I arrived at the house. Then, as my father-in-law started to say that he had something to discuss, I sat down in a chair in the living room. "Catherine, what are you planning to do now? Will you continue living in this house?" Now that Tim was gone, it was just the two of us. I sensed Sam's concern, giving me the freedom to live as I wished. But like Tim, I deeply respected Sam. If it's not a bother, I'd like to keep living here. It's full of memories with Tim. "All right then, let's continue on together," Sam smiled warmly, his eyes crinkling. And so our life as two began. The void left by Tim's absence would never be filled, but we managed to maintain a peaceful life. One Sunday morning, someone visited our house. Typically, Sam would answer since the entrance was on the first floor. That day was no different, but soon after I heard Sam's agitated voice. Descending the stairs, I saw Tim's brother Luke and his wife Rachel standing with large bags. "What's all this about?" "And those bags? We're moving in here from today. Thought it'd be tough on you both," Luke said, stepping into the house as if it was the most natural thing. I greeted them and followed them into the living room. Sam, sitting opposite Luke, asked in a low voice, "What's this about moving all of a sudden?" I had only met Luke and Rachel a couple of times, at our wedding dinner and recently at Tim's funeral. Tim had once mentioned their distant relationship, saying they rarely visited since Sam started living alone. "Well, with Tim gone and Catherine alone to take care of you, I thought as your real son, I should help." I was surprised, having sensed their strained relationship. Sam didn't brighten up, but didn't turn them away either. "You could have at least given us a heads up." "What do you think, Catherine?" Luke and Rachel planned to live with Sam on the first floor, which wouldn't be much of a burden on me. Though slightly uncomfortable with their sudden decision, I saw no reason to object. The change in Sam started about 3 months after we began living as a 4-person household. He started misplacing things, repeating the same conversations, and occasionally becoming irritable or withdrawn. And then my father-in-law, who had always been calm, began to raise his voice like a different person and suddenly became sullen and stopped talking. Suspecting something, I searched online and found that his symptoms matched dementia. The realization shook me. Sam, always healthy and gentle for his age, had changed so drastically. I closed my laptop, taking a deep breath. When I married Tim and decided to live together, I was prepared for eventual caregiving. But that was with Tim by my side. The rapid progression of Sam's condition filled me with a sense of urgency. I attempted to take him to the hospital, but he seemed to be in a bad mood. "Sam, let's go to the hospital just to check. It'll be quick." "Shut up. I'm not going to any hospital. What are you trying to do?" He snapped back furiously, making me flinch. Intimidated by Sam's forceful tone, a reminder of his masculine vigor despite his age, I couldn't muster the courage to insist further. During the weekdays, I work from morning to evening. In my absence, Rachel, a stay-at-home wife, and Luke, on his early return days, would look after Sam. On my days off, I spend the entire day with Sam. Several months have passed since symptoms suggestive of dementia appeared in Sam. His forgetfulness worsened rapidly, often asking for meals right after eating or taking multiple showers a day. This drastic change in Sam saddened me, while my concern for him grew. Perhaps there could be some effective medication or treatment. Leaving it unaddressed, his condition might worsen, making it even more difficult to take him to the hospital. I decided to discuss with Rachel and Luke, who happened to be at home, about taking Sam to the hospital. Can you help me take Sam to the hospital? I think he might listen if we all try to convince him together. Well, maybe it's okay as it is. Rachel's response surprised me, because whenever she interacted with Sam who showed symptoms, she visibly showed her displeasure. Despite moving in under the pretense of helping with caregiving, when I saw Rachel and Sam together, she seemed bothered. Wouldn't taking Sam to the hospital and getting professional care make things easier for Luke and Rachel? Their hesitant response to my proposal made me uneasy, but we won't know if it's really dementia unless we take him to a doctor. I pressed on, and finally Luke and Rachel reluctantly agreed to help take Sam to the hospital. We planned to go a week later when everyone was off. On that day, I woke up early, stretched out, and braced myself. Going to the hospital would mean a diagnosis. There was so much I wanted to ask the doctor about coping with dementia, caregiving, and its progression. Though I felt anxious about caring for Sam alone since Tim's passing, I wanted to join forces with Luke and Rachel to support Sam, who had been so kind to us. With these thoughts, I headed downstairs. Instead of entering the living room on the first floor, I went straight to the front door to fetch the newspaper that Sam reads every morning. Previously, he would get it himself, but since the onset of dementia, someone in the family always did it for him. As usual, I opened the door, but the scene outside was different. A moving truck was parked in front of the house, and Luke and Rachel were busily loading their belongings. "What's this? What's going on?" Hearing my voice, Luke and Rachel noticed me. "We're moving out. Our own house is ready," Luke said nonchalantly, and I was in utter confusion. Today was the day we had promised to take Sam to the hospital. To be honest, we always intended to move out, so whether Sam goes to the hospital or not doesn't really matter to us, Rachel added. So that's why Rachel reacted unexpectedly when I asked for help to convince Sam. They were planning to move out anyway. It dawned on me that moving into our house had been a temporary arrangement until their house was completed. Anger built up inside me towards these two, who had shown up unannounced and now were leaving for their own selfish reasons. "What about Sam? Are you going to leave him in this condition?" I asked angrily, but they showed no remorse. "You can continue caring for him, Catherine. You've been living together, so you should manage. But the situation is completely different now. It's cruel to just abandon him." I protested, hoping they would at least help me take him to the hospital. The thought of taking Sam, who became irate and violent at the mention of the hospital, was daunting for me alone. My pleading fell on deaf ears as Luke and Rachel remained indifferent. Then Luke said something unbelievable. "Well, he's probably going to pass away soon anyway. The rest is up to you." Stunned, I watched Luke turn his back on me nonchalantly. I never imagined Luke could be so callous towards his own father, especially since Tim had passed away less than a year ago. His insensitive remark furrowed my brow in disbelief. Ignoring my shock, they just drove off in the truck. Left standing there, dumbfounded, I remembered Sam inside and hurried to the mailbox to get the newspaper. Still bewildered, I knew my life with Sam would continue. I resolved to somehow take him to the hospital alone and care for him no matter what, clutching the newspaper I had just picked up. As I entered the living room on the first floor where Sam was likely waiting, I was surprised to see him sitting and drinking coffee. This was unexpected because Sam's dementia had progressed to the point where he couldn't even make coffee for himself. He was sipping his coffee quietly, looking like his old calm self before dementia. After a quick glance at me, Sam grinned. "They finally left, huh? I've been waiting for this moment." Confused, I just stared at him. The more I observed, the more he seemed like his old self. He beckoned me to sit down in the living room, and I obediently took a seat. Sam then stood up and prepared a cup of coffee for me. "Thank you." "Well, Sam, about what?" I stammered, unsure of what to say. Sam, observing my confused state, gave a mischievous smile. Sorry for all the trouble I've caused. How was my acting? I was utterly shocked. As I sat there stunned, Sam, smiling broadly, explained everything. It all started a few days after Tim's funeral. Luke had proposed to Sam to live together to prevent me, Tim's wife, from shouldering the caregiving responsibility. He and Rachel would take care of him instead. Concerned about me, Sam had agreed and moved in with them. However, Luke and Rachel claimed they had no money, so Sam ended up paying for their new home in full. He had planned to eventually tell me about this and hand over this house to me. But when Luke and Rachel moved in, Sam felt something was off. His suspicions were confirmed when he overheard a conversation between Luke and Rachel. Are you sure we won't get caught for leaving Sam and moving out? Of course. We'll live in our nice new house and Sam's paid for it anyway. They had planned to make Sam pay for the new house and then find an excuse to live there alone. Sam was initially happy to live with his estranged son, but felt betrayed when he realized it was a deception. Just imagining it makes my heart ache, and I think it must have been even more painful for my father-in-law, who was directly involved. Despite his heartache, he still wanted to believe in his son. He pretended to have dementia, hoping to test their conscience. The result was disappointing. Rachel started to despise and mistreat Sam with his supposed dementia, and Luke, his own son, showed no concern or care. Sam had resisted going to the hospital, fearing his act would be uncovered. Overwhelmed with all this information, I realized that Luke and Rachel had cold-heartedly deceived Sam, who had been so kind to them. To my astonishment, Sam said, "I won't show any mercy to those heartless two." No mercy? What are you planning to do? Well, you'll see soon enough, Sam replied, hinting at some plan, but I was clueless. I had braced myself for solo caregiving, believing Sam had dementia, so this revelation left me feeling relieved yet bewildered. Sam apologized repeatedly for deceiving me, even temporarily, and for the trouble he caused. The reality of having the kind and gentle Sam back was increasingly clear. I was relieved that he wasn't ill. The following days, showing no signs of dementia, we returned to the tranquil and quiet life we had before. 1 month after Luke and Rachel moved out, Sam and I were still living together, maintaining a good balance of support for each other. Sam used to cook for himself, but recently his legs had been giving him trouble, so I started cooking dinner and we ate together. Today, being off from my job, I went shopping at a nearby supermarket and was thinking about tonight's dinner menu. As I turned the last corner and my house came into view, I saw a group of people gathered in front. Could something have happened to Sam? I rushed home. To my surprise, the commotion was caused by Luke and Rachel arguing with Sam at the front door. Could they be moving back in? Seeing their large carry-on bags, a sinking feeling hit me. Their loud voices attracted the neighbors, who gathered around to see what was happening. Luke and Rachel, frantic and indifferent to the onlookers, were confronting Sam. Worried about escalating the situation and possibly causing a disturbance, I approached and urged them inside. Ignoring my pleas, they continued. Their heated discussion, so I pushed them into the entrance and apologized to the neighbors before closing the door. Let's calm down and talk in the living room. Calm down? Are you even listening, Dad? What do you mean by this? But Luke and Rachel were too agitated to listen. Sam listened obediently to my words and walked into the living room. In the living room, Sam sat down while Luke and Rachel stood angrily in front of him. Sam, this is awful. How could you sell our house without telling us? We've been kicked out. That house was built with my money. You two never intended to live with me. Sam retorted, and Luke and Rachel froze, shocked that Sam knew about their intentions. You're mistaken. We were just settling down, and we're going to invite you to live with us, they said, desperately trying to justify themselves. Sam, unfazed, looked at them with disdain. He revealed that he had accidentally overheard them discussing their plan to make him pay for the house, and then live there alone. Disgusted by their heartless behavior, Sam had pretended to have dementia to test their conscience, but their attitudes only confirmed his suspicions. Today you seemed fine, so was it all an act? You deceived us. As an apology, give us the money from selling the house, Rachel demanded outrageously. I was astonished at Rachel's audacity, but Sam remained calm, waving his hands dismissively. I can't give you anything. It's Catherine who's been supporting and worrying about me all this time. I've decided to leave everything to her. Luke's face turned red with anger, and he slammed his hand on the table, making a loud noise. Despite this, Sam remained stoic, his gaze cold and steady. Enough, then give us this house. It's crazy that a stranger gets everything while I, his real son, get nothing. That's impossible. This house is already scheduled to be demolished and the land sold. Sensing Luke's disbelief, I added, the house is in my name. It was decided after consulting with Sam. Luke was taken aback by my sudden interjection. The house, originally under Tim's name, had been transferred to me after his death. Tim had insisted on a legal marriage so that I could smoothly inherit his assets, something I hadn't anticipated at the time, but was now grateful for. Realizing they had lost both the house and Sam's support, Luke and Rachel stood in stunned silence. Family isn't just about blood. It's about caring and honesty, something you two have failed at. There's nothing left to say to you. Please leave, Sam said, his voice firm and resolute. In an uncharacteristically cold voice, my usually gentle father-in-law Sam delivered a final blow to the stunned Luke and Rachel. The two of them, previously so enraged, seemed to vanish into thin air. They shuffled down the hallway to the front door, and then I heard the door close with a thud. Half a year has passed since that last encounter with Luke and Rachel. I'm about to lock the door of my new apartment and head to my job. The house was raised and put up for sale, and Sam decided to move into a facility. He proposed this soon after Luke and Rachel left. Approaching 80, Sam is still relatively healthy for his age, but he's aware that his abilities are waning. He probably disliked the idea of burdening me with his care. Despite my insistence that he shouldn't worry about me, Sam seemed resolute in his decision. He still has savings, enough to cover the cost of the nursing home, so he expressed his wish to move there. We discussed it for a while, but considering the possibility of trouble occurring while I'm at work, I reluctantly agreed to his proposal. Fortunately, the nursing home Sam is moving into is near my workplace. Visiting him for about an hour after work has become my daily routine. Hi Sam, how are you today? Hello Catherine, I'm doing well, and you look great too. He now walks with a cane and seems much smaller than before, bent over with age. But his voice and complexion appear healthy, and I am relieved. As we chat in the meeting room, other residents pass by and greet Sam, who seems to have become quite popular in the home. Since then, I've received several calls from Luke and Rachel begging for money. It seems their dream home has become a distant fantasy, and they are struggling in a small, old rental house. Their pleas, desperate and faint, find no sympathy in me. My consistent refusal eventually led to the cessation of their calls. Now, I look forward to my visits to the nursing home and enjoy my peaceful life in my beautiful apartment. I sincerely hope these days continue. My name is Susan Thompson. I'm a lawyer employed, but I've followed a proper path and landed a legitimate job. I've been married for about 13 years. My husband was previously engaged and has a daughter, Molly, from that relationship. We remarried, but now that she's in her teenage years, she's increasingly ignoring me. I've always believed that she would understand someday. So I've worked hard both at my job and as a mother. Time passed, and when she brought home her fiancé, Simon, he said something shocking. To my dismay, both my husband and daughter agreed, telling me to leave the room and the house, claiming I'm not a real family member. Despite all my efforts, I was speechless at their unexpected treatment. It takes me back 13 years. I want you to become my daughter's mother. My husband had proposed to me. Back then I had no experience with marriage. Just like my mother lovingly disciplined me, I tried to teach my daughter, Molly, the difference between right and wrong. If you stay out this late, it's not good. Who do you think you are? Pretending to be my mom? You're not my mom, so stop acting like it. You're just a housekeeper. Just clean and cook for us. How can you say such things to a parent? That's because you're not my parent. She retorted like that. I cooked for her, and she would frown at the table saying, "What's this?" "It's meatloaf." I'd respond thinking it's a dish young people would like. "What? Can't you make anything else? It's like you only know one recipe." That's not true. Yesterday I made chicken, and the day before that, fish. I wasn't in the mood for meatloaf today. She would leave, and then come back with a burger. Meatloaf or a hamburger, aren't they similar? I thought so, but couldn't say anything. Yet, she always wanted more pocket money than usual. Hey, I need some money. I gave you some at the beginning of the month. That's not enough. My friends get way more. I get so little, I can't even hang out with my friends. If I get left out, it's all your fault. You're in middle school. I can't give you that much. I've discussed this with your dad. Always bringing up dad. A real mom would give me money on the sly. You're useless. Fine, give me money for textbooks then. Textbooks? How much? About $50. Well, I guess that can't be helped. I gave her the money, but it seems she never bought the textbooks. This continued, and when I talked to my husband, he just said, Molly's going through a rebellious phase. It can't be helped. I was upset with Molly, but even more so with my husband's attitude. Time passed, and after Molly graduated from college, my husband suddenly wanted to rebuild our house. What? We don't have that kind of money. We'll get a loan. A loan? We can't work for another 10 years. We'll just be left with a loan. If we don't, Molly will get married and leave. That's natural, isn't it? No, it means she'll leave the house. I don't want to let go of Molly. We need a nice house for that. If we have a grand house, any man she might find will want to live here. I don't think so. No, it's settled. You think it's okay to marry her off because she's not your real daughter. I absolutely disagree. We need to rebuild this house to keep Molly here. What about the remaining loan? If Molly gets married, the young couple can take it over. If they live here, they'll pay for it. Isn't that unfair? As long as we're working, we'll pay it. No problem there. But we can't keep our current salary forever. Enough. I've decided. Don't argue. This is not a discussion. It's decided. So we ended up rebuilding the house, and Molly was thrilled when she heard about it. Really, Dad? Yes, really. I can't let a cute daughter like you live in such a shabby house. That's why we're building a new one. But there's a loan. We can't work forever. You'll end up with the loan. Dad, she's being annoying. She's trying to ruin my dream. See, Molly's fine with it. You don't need to say anything. You're making a fuss when my daughter is happy. This marriage was a mistake. How can you say that? In the end, they didn't care about my opposition, built the house, and soon after Molly brought her fiancé home. And now I'm being ousted as an unwanted person. Hey, how long were you planning to sit there? You're not her mom, so just leave already. Exactly. How slow can you be? Just go. Hearing them again, I snapped back to reality. Yes, right, I muttered, getting up to gather my things in the bedroom. Alone in the bedroom, packing my bags, tears started flowing. From the living room, I could hear the three of them chatting happily. Oh, so Simon is a lawyer and he owns such a big office. That's impressive. Molly, you've caught yourself an amazing man. Dad, please. Caught is such a harsh word. My apologies. It seemed my husband was reassured just knowing that Molly's fiancé was a lawyer. Indeed, a young lawyer like him would likely keep working and be able to pay off the house loan. And as a business owner, he must be earning far more than me, a mere employed lawyer. I see, so that's how it is, I thought to myself. Despite understanding, the pain of all my past efforts being shattered by the appearance of this fiancé was unbearable, and I struggled to pack my bags. Eventually, I managed to stuff my personal belongings into a suitcase and went back to the living room. I will leave now. What, you're still here? Don't bother announcing it. Just go. Simon might get upset. I informed them I'd return later for the rest of my things and left the house. From the living room, I could hear my husband and daughter's cheerful voices. Even though she's a lawyer too, she's just employed. She's no match for Simon. Now that she's gone, the house feels so much cleaner. Their words pierced my back as I hurried out the door. Suddenly homeless, I stayed in a hotel near my workplace before finding a new place to live. My new home felt empty, but it was far better than being with them. All the effort for such people. I feel sorry for myself, I thought. From now on, I will use my time and money for myself. With this mindset, I began to change my work and daily life. A month passed. I had gotten used to living alone. My husband contacted me. Perhaps it was about divorce. After all, we hadn't contacted a lawyer to start the divorce process yet, so it was inevitable. But I hesitated to bring it up myself, so we had been separated for a month. However, the phone call was about something entirely different. Hey, the house loan hasn't been paid. To my surprise, my husband told me about the mortgage on our house, even though we live separately. That's because you haven't deposited money into the account. I did my part. Haven't you paid? Of course I haven't. Why not? I don't live in that house anymore. Why should I pay the loan? We agreed to pay it together when we bought the house. That was if I lived there. Why would I pay for a loan on a house I don't live in? We're still married, so you should pay. You and Molly told me to leave. I left. I won't pay the loan anymore. We said leave, but we're not divorced. We might not be divorced yet, but we're separated. I can't be with you after what you said. Even so, we're still married. You have an obligation to pay. Unfortunately, you're the primary debtor of that house. And since I don't live there, I have no obligation to pay. Primary debtor? Yes, you're the owner and you live there. You should pay. Thus, you have a lawyer, Molly's fiancé. Ask him if I'm wrong, but we decided to buy the house together. I opposed buying it. I said we couldn't afford the loan. But you insisted. What an unreasonable person. Won't you sacrifice for your family? For a family that loves me, yes, but you don't consider me family. Otherwise you wouldn't have said those things. Besides, the young couple will eventually pay, right? Let them start now. He's a capable lawyer who runs his own firm. He is a lawyer who runs his own firm. He must have the money. If he can pay, that is it. Of course he can pay. He is a far more successful lawyer than you ever were. He earns way more than you could ever imagine. Well, that is good for you then. I just hope it does not hurt too much. What do you mean by that? You will understand in time. Annoyed, he ended the call with, "What an insufferable woman." He had apparently assumed that Molly and her fiancé would marry soon and take over the loan. But even after 6 months, there was no news of their wedding. They were living together at his house, seemingly without contributing to household expenses or bills, essentially freeloading. Occasionally, he would call me, confused about their activities, as they would leave and return without explaining what they were doing. But such a situation could not last forever. 6 months later, he called me again, this time sounding desperate. "Those two still aren't getting married?" I asked. "I see. They live together," he replied. "Oh, that's right. They live together, but they don't contribute to the expenses at all. That's what you were complaining about the other day. If you want your living expenses to be included, you can just say so." "Yeah, I guess so. You should just ask them to chip in." "Yeah, well, I've been using my savings to cover everything. If it weren't for the loan, it would have been manageable, but paying the full loan amount is tough." "Understandable," I replied. Still, I was able to get by as long as I got paid. I was barely able to get by, but... "So what's the problem?" I asked. "Well, the company I worked for, it went bankrupt." "Oh, you knew?" "When it's in the news so much, it's hard not to know about it." His company had been involved in a fraud scandal, causing massive losses to their clients. The employees, unaware of the situation, were left unpaid and in chaos, so now I can't even afford the living expenses. Maybe you should talk to Molly about it. I did. I told her everything, the company's bankruptcy, my dwindling savings, all of it. "So what's the issue?" I asked. When I asked them to contribute to the living expenses, they said they couldn't. "I can't force them if they say they can't," he replied. "Molly might not be able to, but what about her boyfriend? He's a successful lawyer, isn't he?" Apparently, Molly's been giving him some money because his business is struggling too. So neither of them can help with the expenses. "Did you talk to her boyfriend directly?" "Yes, I did. I told him it's unreasonable not to pay. I would do anything to live together." Then Simon started yelling. He said since Molly wanted to live together, I should ask her for money, not him. And when he found out his business wasn't doing well, he became even more upset, saying it's unfair to ask him to pay under these circumstances. He even threatened to leave if I insisted on payment, and Molly, crying, tried to stop him. They ended up deciding to move out together. So now I'm trying to manage on my own. Can you manage? No, I'm struggling to find work at my age. I see. I'm in trouble. But I still believe this is just temporary. In what way? Simon is a lawyer. If he gets clients, everything will be fine. The problem is just the lack of clients. I'm sure it'll pick up soon. Do you still believe that? Of course, that's why I'm calling you, despite the embarrassment. Can you lend me some money? I'm sure I'll be able to pay you back once things improve. I can't make such an impossible promise. But if Simon's law firm succeeds, that's not going to happen. Why would you say that? Because he's not a real lawyer. What? How can you say that? What makes you believe he is a lawyer? Well, he said he's a lawyer, so he must be one, right? That's naive. Look, search his name on this website. If it's listed, he's genuine, but I assure you, his name won't be there. No way, it's true. But he showed me the certificate. He showed you just a picture, right? It could be replicated. Whether he is one or not means nothing. So I've been deceived? Yes, he's a fake as far as my investigation goes. That's absurd. Then who is he? By the way, do you have the house's deed? Of course I do. Why wouldn't I? You might want to check. Things you think are secure can sometimes disappear, I suggested. Panicking, he seemed to rummage through his drawers. It's not here. Did you take it? I wouldn't do such a thing. Then who would? Simon? Exactly. Why would he do this? He might be a con artist. A con artist? I thought it was strange for a fellow lawyer to insist on me leaving first. That's not normal. But you're a stranger. A real lawyer wouldn't say that. He started acting up as soon as he heard I was a lawyer. Everything made sense after that. What do you mean? If he's pretending to be a lawyer, a real one like me would be a nuisance, because I would figure it out. Exactly. He probably can't even provide a registration number. A lawyer would be able to say it off the top of their head. Only a first-year novice wouldn't know their number. I'll ask him when he gets back. Do you think he's coming back? How naive. He always comes back. By now, he's probably on the run. Why do you think that? Search the house. Look inside electrical outlets behind paintings. If he's a con artist, you might find hidden bugs. That's ridiculous. Just wait, he said before apparently searching the house. He found something unexpected in an electrical outlet. That's probably a bug. If he's been listening in, he knows you're onto him and won't be coming back. What about the house? It's probably already sold. You should check. But I own it. He can't just sell it. He's a con artist. He knows how to sell it. That's insane. I've been paying the loan. If it's sold, the money goes to him and you're left with a loan. Did you know about this? Are you in on it? Of course not. This is just my speculation. But finding a bug makes it likely. Why didn't you tell me earlier? What good would it have done? You trusted him. You would have just insulted me. Besides, I'm just a stranger, right? Why would I go out of my way to help someone who told me to leave? That's ridiculous. Sure, I might not have listened to you before, but you could have said something. No one's gonna tell you anything when they know they'll just be yelled at and belittled. Besides, why should I make an effort for someone who told me to leave? Is there really nothing that can be done? Can't we somehow get the house back? The only option is to go to the police. But without knowing who Simon sold it to, there's no way to stop it. Even then, if it's been cleverly sold, the police might not even take your word for it. No way. Shocked, my husband kept repeating, that's too much. About a month later, they received an eviction notice because their house had been sold. Help me. Oh, what happened? I've been told to vacate. So it was sold. You're a lawyer, can't you do something? I'm just an employee. If you're insistent, you could ask my firm, but we're quite expensive. We mainly take on corporate cases. Don't say that. Without knowing who the other party is, there's not much I can do. If Simon were here and you could make him compensate, then maybe. But a lawyer can't do much without knowing the perpetrator. It's our house. Actually, it's not. You bought that house without me. It's not my house. Besides, I don't live there. Why are you being so cold? We're family. You and Molly made me feel unwelcome by kicking me out. I've come to terms with the fact that we're now strangers. But that's just your perception. I never intended for things to escalate to this point. I simply thought that, since Simon claimed to be a lawyer, he would take care of the house loan even if I wasn't there. And since Molly didn't like me, her mood would improve if I left, right? Did you really think I wouldn't understand that? It's not like that. I was only thinking of Molly at the time. You're important to me, really. But you're lying. I know you prioritize Molly above everything else. No matter what you say now, my feelings won't change. Please help me. You're the only one I can turn to. Unfortunately, I have no intention of helping. Can you even afford the lawyer fees? They're not cheap, but we can get a family discount. Or you could handle it personally, then it wouldn't be an issue. No, why should I do anything for you? Consult another lawyer. What are we supposed to do then? Oh right. That reminds me, let's finalize our divorce. Divorce? Yes, according to you, we're strangers. Plus, I was just a fake mother. There's no reason for us to stay married. That's absurd. I'm suffering because of you. You underestimated women and now you're paying the price. I'll send you the divorce papers. If you don't agree with them, I'll take legal action. And if you refuse to divorce, I'll claim alimony. Think about it. Why alimony? Because you ridiculed and expelled me while we were married. It's compensation for the mental anguish. And I'll also claim my share of the assets we accumulated together. Even if the house was scammed away, that's on you, so I'll claim half of its value. Think it over. That's ridiculous. Utterly defeated, he fell into despair. Serves you right. Eventually, it was confirmed by the police that Simon was a fraudster, but the house was never recovered. My ex-husband and Molly had to leave with only the loan remaining. My ex-husband asked Molly to pay half of it. However, Molly, who is selfish by nature, yelled at her ex-husband saying, "Why do I have to pay the loan when I don't even have a house?" You were also happy to have a new house, weren't you? I was happy, but I didn't expect it to turn out like this. It was your decision, so you should take responsibility for it. She moved out on her own, cutting ties with him. Despite his efforts, my ex-husband couldn't find a job and had to work multiple jobs, but it still wasn't enough. Since I'm living alone anyway, maybe I should move. Should move somewhere cheaper. Resigned to his fate, he moved into a rundown one-room apartment. To make ends meet, he started working multiple part-time jobs, which took a toll on his health. Additionally, because he didn't sign the divorce papers I sent, he had to pay alimony and property settlement, forcing him to borrow from consumer finance companies. As a result, his debt ballooned to an unmanageable level. It's over. There's nothing I can do. Ultimately, he chose to file for bankruptcy and is now living a bare minimum life. As for me, leaving that house was the catalyst for starting my own law firm. Now I spend my days running around helping those in need, living a fulfilling life. Hey, high school dropout. Try greeting in French, huh? You can't do it because you're just a high school dropout, huh? My sister laughing prompted me to introduce myself in French. She must think I'm barely competent in French because I'm just a high school graduate. To her, I replied with a smile. Got it? Leave it to me. Huh? Ignoring my surprised sister, I began revealing her secrets in French. I'm Jessica Wood, 28 years old, born into a typical American white-collar family. I have a younger sister, Emily, 3 years my junior. My dad is a middle management executive, and my mom, now a part-timer, used to be a homemaker. Emily, unlike me, was cherished by our parents since she was little. Mom, unable to attend college due to family circumstances, was determined to ensure her children went to college. However, as the eldest daughter, I wasn't academically inclined. By the time I reached the 3rd grade, my parents had given up on the idea of sending me to college. In contrast, Emily was smart and fairly pretty from a young age, so our parents doted on her, the more capable child. They sent her to a prestigious private middle school, while I attended the local public middle school. Emily, unlike me, was accepted into a prestigious private high school, but I ended up at a public high school known locally for its troubled students. You're just not cut out for academics, they said. We'll let you finish high school, but after that, you're on your own. We're saving our money for Emily, my mom said. My dad just nodded in agreement. So after high school, I had to start working, but I had no idea what to do, as everyone around me went off to college. Feeling lost, I managed to get a job at a delivery company, thanks to a recommendation from a high school teacher. They had a dormitory, so I decided to move out. It was supposed to be a temporary solution, but I ended up staying there for years. It was supposed to be for Emily's sake, but she herself said, "I've always disliked you. Dumb and ugly, I just wished you'd disappear. Thanks for leaving so soon." Far from feeling sorry, she was actually spiteful. I was so frustrated I cried, but I resolved to live on my own terms. Years passed, and Emily graduated from Harvard and joined a well-known multinational trading company. I hadn't returned home since leaving, but occasional messages and photos from Emily kept me somewhat updated on the family. Dad was laid off due to poor company performance, and now worked behind the scenes at a local supermarket. Mom continued working part-time. Emily did offer some financial support, but mostly spent her money on spas and yoga classes, so Mom couldn't quit her job. One summer, Emily insisted I come home, so I did. For the first time in about 8 years, I didn't want to return at all. Upon arriving home, I said I'm back, but got no response as expected. So I just went in and found my parents and Emily. "You didn't have to come back. Emily's being nice by letting you in this house." "Be thankful to her," Mom said harshly. Mom had aged as expected over the years. "What, no gifts? You're still a disappointment," Dad added. His hairline had receded noticeably. Seeing how much they'd changed, I felt the weight of my absence. Emily, lounging on the sofa, glared at me and said, "Still as ugly as ever, huh? Living in the countryside, eating nothing but potatoes? Fits a clumsy sister like you. Anyway, why don't you sit over there?" Pointing with her chin to a spot. I wanted to retort, "You haven't changed either," but held back. I didn't want to tell her, but since it's a celebration, I thought I'd share. "A celebration? Don't tell me you're getting married?" "Exactly that. And guess what? He's the president of a major French food import company, a foreigner living in France. He's a really nice guy. He's gonna take care of us, even building us a mansion in France after we marry." Despite it being Emily's fiancé who's doing everything, Dad said it with an air of importance. "That's right. Who would have thought we'd be living in France? Good thing we put our hopes in Emily. If we'd relied on you, nothing like this would have happened." Mom also started laughing, her nostrils flaring wide. I guess they were overjoyed. "But you know, this has nothing to do with you. However, if you pay your own way to France, we might let you stay cheaply." Emily laughed along with Mom. "They don't realize that leaving America is the greatest happiness for me." "That's all you wanted to say? You called me back just for this?" "Just say congratulations. We're having a family gathering to celebrate, and you have to attend. Is it okay for me to join? We have to put on a show of a happy family in front of our relatives." "I understand. Got it." It was expected, but hearing it face to face was infuriating. Emily works in a trading company dealing with foreign food imports and is fluent in French. As I mentioned before, I'm just a high school graduate. Emily has always looked down on me for it. I'm embarrassed to even mention that I have a high school dropout sister. I wish you were part of our family. If you feel that way, go ahead. It's not that simple. That's why it's a hassle. I don't care. I've been on my own since high school. Your life is none of my business. Huh? We're family legally. I'll allow minimal interaction. Sure, let's do that. Anyway, once Emily gets married, we're moving to France. You'll be on your own here in the United States, Dad said. Have you ever been overseas? No way. I don't even have a passport. Traveling abroad is great. I know because I've traveled a lot, both for work and leisure. Emily started bragging again. I've traveled the world, but France is special. Everything is picturesque and foreign. Well, it's a foreign country, so that's to be expected. Traveling overseas is nice, but Southeast Asia is not my preference. Places like Thailand or the Philippines are okay for tourism, but I hate seeing all the poverty in the countryside. Then why not pay more for their produce and help their economy? It's hard for them to find work at home, so they go abroad to earn a living. Life is tough for everyone. They're just the exception. Seeing my annoyance, Emily glared at me. You seem like you have something to say. People in Southeast Asia work hard too. Many of them work at my factory. So you're just like them, working in a factory. Stick with your own kind. I'm a winner, you're a loser. I was close to tears. But soon she'll be leaving America. That thought comforted me. Back at home, at work the next day, my colleague Maya noticed my sadness. What's wrong, Jessica? You seem down. Maya, from Malaysia, works in the US to support her sister's education and family. She and her sister are the same age as me. She struggles with reading and writing English, but speaks it fluently. Ah, Maya, I'm sorry. It's just some family stuff. If it helps, I can listen. Or we can go for a drink. Thanks for caring. Maya treats me like a sister, as her own sister, and I are the same age. Maya is usually quiet and hardworking, well-liked at work because of her serious nature. One day I received an email from Emily. She asked me to entertain a foreign buyer. There are tourist spots near my workplace, perfect for the occasion. Can you arrange everything? Actually, just do it. Indeed, there are famous tourist spots near my workplace. I know which hotels are reputable, and I'm familiar with both popular and hidden gems. I didn't like her bossy attitude, but I didn't want to deal with the hassle of refusing. If it doesn't interfere with my work, I thought it would be okay to help, so I told Emily that. On the appointed day, Emily arrived with the foreigner. He was younger than I expected, a handsome guy with beautiful blonde hair. Nice to meet you. I'm William. I was born in the US, so I speak English pretty well, he said. Relieved that he spoke English, I was about to guide them in my car when Emily snapped, "What's this, a compact car?" I replied, "Yes, but is there a problem?" She scolded me, saying it was disrespectful to put a guest in a car like this. I explained that I live alone in the countryside, so this size is convenient for me. I thought to myself that if she didn't like it, she could arrange something herself. But I kept quiet to avoid trouble. To my surprise, William said, "No, it's a cute car. I love compact cars. They are a brilliant invention, especially popular mini trucks in France." Emily was displeased, but William seemed happy, so we left, ignoring her opinion. William shared a lot with me. His dad's relocation brought his family to the US, where he was born. He studied in America in college, wanting to work related to the US, and now he's handling American affairs in his company. He talked a lot, mostly to me, which made Emily increasingly unhappy. When we arrived at the tourist spot, she said, "I'll take over from here. Just grab some food and wait at the hotel. That's enough for today. Come pick us up at 8 a.m. tomorrow," she said dismissively. But soon, I received another email from Emily saying there was something to talk about and to come immediately. Knowing that arguing would only make things worse, I reluctantly went to her. "You're here. Let's go somewhere else to talk," she said. I followed Emily to a nearby diner, where she lectured me, "Don't embarrass me, and don't flirt with William." Both accusations were baseless. She also scolded me for putting her guest in a compact car, saying I should have rented a luxury car as it is common sense. She also told me not to talk too much to William, reminding me that he is her guest and I am just a driver. Just drive and guide without any extra chatter. "You're not in a position to talk to William," she said. So she said. I responded nonchalantly and tuned her out. It's hard to believe she's getting married. I felt sorry for her partner, wondering if he's like her. But it's none of my business. After her long lecture, I finally returned, and there was Maya. "Welcome back, Jessica. You're late. You look troubled. What happened?" "Ah, just tired from talking to Emily. How about we have a drink in my room? I made some Malaysian dishes. Let's eat together. Malaysian cuisine? Sounds delicious. I'd love to join." After having a light dinner with Maya in the room, I suddenly craved something sweet, so I went out to the convenience store. Arriving at the store and about to enter, I recognized a familiar face inside. It was my sister Emily, and next to her was a man I had never seen before. They seemed close, but could he be her fiancé? She said her fiancé was a foreigner, but this man looked definitely American. I knew Emily was here for business, but why was she with another man in such a place? As I pondered this and stopped, the two of them came out of the store, and I quickly hid. "Are you sure I can trust you? Don't worry. Even if I get married, I plan to divorce soon, within a year, and return to America. But I can live with you. I'll get money from the alimony and division of property. Everything is going according to plan." I was shocked to hear Emily's words about her plan. "That's clever of you, elite lady, to come up with such a scheme. It's your fault for making me feel this way." Emily said about the man named Takashi, who then silently pulled her chin and kissed her, not caring that they were outside. I recorded their conversation on my smartphone camera. Feeling like I had done a good job, I finished shopping at the convenience store and hurried back to the dorm. Even after returning, my heart was still racing from what I had seen. As time passed, I couldn't forget the shocking event. Then I received news about a family gathering to celebrate Emily's engagement. Honestly, I didn't want to go, but since it was a family event, I felt obligated to attend. My mother was very proud of Emily's engagement to a foreign company president. Emily's fiancé is a French company president. They plan to build a mansion in France after getting married. And then, we're all going to live there, together. Next year we'll be in France. My mother was more talkative than usual, perhaps due to the alcohol. Emily was also in a good mood, smiling broadly. He's the president of a company that does business with mine. I handled their account and got close to him, leading to the proposal. He said I was as beautiful as a doll. Emily's boastful talk seemed ridiculous to me. I was drinking alone at a distant seat, but Emily approached me. "Why are you sitting alone? You won't find a president, but maybe you'll manage to find a plain man." Even though I ignored her, she continued, "Well, we'll be living in France after getting married. We plan to sell the family home and move to France, so you'll have no home to return to. You should just live on your own. It's none of our concern. Deal free. I don't need to be treated like family anymore." That sounds like sour grapes to me. Well, I'll live my life my way, so please stop interfering. That's my line. Don't expect anything from my wealthy husband just because we're family. I wouldn't dream of it. Just make sure you don't end up divorcing quickly and returning to America. What are you saying? That's rude. Oh, did I hit a nerve? What are you talking about? We're gonna swear eternal love before God. You don't believe in God, but you're making vows to him. What a farce. I have that much feeling. Whatever you say sounds like a loser's howling. Our voices got louder, and we were eventually stopped by people around us, but Emily's panic suggested the previous conversation was true. Finally, Emily's fiancé was coming to America. Emily and our parents went to the airport to pick him up, but I was to meet him at a family dinner. On the day of the dinner, I headed to the designated hotel. As usual, my parents were unpleasant. The banquet was held in a private room of a traditional restaurant with Emily and Jack already seated when we arrived. It was my first time meeting Jack. He seemed like a genuinely nice guy, 38 years old. Upon our entrance, Jack, with a friendly smile and somewhat awkward English, greeted, "Nice to meet you, I'm Jack." Emily then fluently introduced our parents in French. When it was time to introduce me, Emily smirked unpleasantly. "Come on, high school graduate. Greet him in French, will you?" Facing Emily's mocking, I smiled back and said, "Okay." After a brief cough, I began speaking in French. "Welcome to America, Mr. Jack. My name is Jessica, Emily's sister. I currently work at an American delivery company. Emily has been hiding a secret from you, which I will now explain." "Eh? How can you speak French?" "Oh, a Malaysian colleague at my workplace taught me. I might have a bit of an accent." Indeed, I had been learning French from Maya. Although Malay is Malaysia's official language, Maya was also fluent in French. During breaks and days off, I learned French from Maya. I've always liked French, often watching French films and listening to French music. I often watch movies and dramas, and now I use online videos to study. "I see you have studied, but what secret are you talking about?" "The past bullying? That's ancient history," Emily began to rant. "No, not old stories. This is recent." Jack looked puzzled as we spoke in English. But then I explained in French. "Sorry, what I want to discuss is how my sister is planning to use her marriage to you for her own gain." "Her own gain? What do you mean?" Jack asked, with a puzzled expression. "First, please watch this video." I showed him the video on my smartphone. It was the scene of Emily kissing Kyle in front of the convenience store, which I had accidentally recorded. I translated the English conversation into French on the spot. "This was recently filmed. The woman is my sister. Her face is hard to see, but the man is Kyle, a colleague from my sister's company. I knew that much from their conversation at the time." "What does this mean?" Jack's face turned stern. Emily, what's this about? Explain. This is fake. I only love you. As Emily, Jack, and I argued in French, our parents were confused. You claim this video is fake, but it's enough to make me distrust you. I will conduct further investigations. As I translated for our parents, they began to panic. Emily, is what Jessica is saying true? Isn't this just a lie Jessica made up for revenge? My mother tried to defend Emily. No, this is all true. Jack, don't be deceived. Jessica is just a high school graduate with bad conduct. We disown her for this disrespectful behavior. Sorry for any inconvenience. That's right. Jessica is just jealous of her beautiful and successful sister trying to ruin this marriage, my father added. Of course, they were speaking English, which Jack couldn't understand. Come on, Jessica, explain properly to Jack. If they insist, I told Jack. My parents are claiming my story is not true, but there's no proof to show it's a lie. On the contrary, I have this video as evidence. Which testimony do you think is true? I believe you, Jessica. Let's go somewhere else and you can tell me more. Understood. With that, leaving behind my bewildered parents and wailing sister Emily, I stood up with Jack. Later, after hearing my story, Jack confronted Kyle and made him confess everything. Emily's engagement with Jack was called off due to her fault, and Jack demanded significant compensation from her and our parents. Emily, having caused trouble for her company's client, and tarnishing its reputation, she was fired. My parents had already sold our family home in anticipation of moving to France, but all the money went to Emily's compensation and damages. Having quit their jobs in preparation for the move to France, my parents would struggle to find work in a new home. But that was no longer my concern. Fluent in French, Emily tried to get a job in another multinational trading company, but her previous misconduct was well known due to the industry's close connections, and no one would hire her. She had no choice but to work as a cleaner in a motel. And then surprisingly, I ended up in a relationship with William. William, who had come to America, started visiting me each time he was in the country, thanks to the help I had given him before. Recently, he even proposed to me. William, who loves America, has requested a transfer to the American branch, and we plan to live in the US after getting married. He is currently studying English intensely. When I told Maya about my engagement, she was delighted and gifted us a honeymoon trip to her homeland, Malaysia. Maya would be our guide and taxi, allowing us to tour the sites more affordably than with regular tours. With my upcoming marriage, I decided to quit my current job, but I intend to continue my friendship with Maya. My life as a high school graduate, which had its share of struggles, was about to embark on its second chapter.